My son slapped me at my 70th birthday party while drunk and shouted, "I wish I'd never been your son." 200 members of Miami's elite watched in stunned silence as their phones captured my humiliation. I was reduced to a bitter old man whose spoiled son had finally snapped, or so they thought. What none of them knew was that for 35 years I had been living the most devastating lie. The next morning, a dying doctor's phone call shattered everything I believed about my family, and I realized Silas had handed me the perfect weapon of revenge, a truth so shocking it would destroy him completely. I need to know where my audience is tuning in from before I reveal the shocking truth that Doctor told me. Comment your city below, because after 35 years of lies, I'm about to expose a secret that will leave you speechless. The Coral Gables Yacht Club Terrace buzzed with Miami's elite, celebrating my 70th birthday. Crystal chandeliers illuminated 200 guests, raising champagne glasses, but I felt hollow, watching from the railing. Catherine should have been here. 12 years ago I lost her, and without her warmth, I was just the rich old man throwing an expensive party. "Dad!" Silas's voice cut through conversations like a blade. My son weaved through the crowd, his Armani suit. Wrinkled bow tie, loose eyes, glassy from hours of drinking. At 35, he still carried himself like a fraternity boy who'd never grown up. Silas. I kept my voice neutral. I was wondering if you'd show up. Wouldn't miss dear old Dad's big 7-0. He slurred, grabbing champagne from a waiter. Besides, we need to talk. Several guests glanced our way. Mrs. Pemberton raised an eyebrow. Judge Martinez paused mid-sentence. In Miami, society's scenes were currency Silas was about to spend. "This isn't the time or place," I said quietly. "We'll discuss whatever's troubling you tomorrow." "No, we'll discuss it now." Silas shrugged off my touch with force. "I need $2 million. The words hit like a punch. "2 million, Silas. What have you done now?" "Does it matter?" His voice rose, drawing stares. "I'm your son, your only child. That has to count for something. Count for something." I felt 35 years of frustration boiling over. Like when I paid off your gambling debts in college, you promised you'd changed. Or when I covered your losses at the Fontainebleau last year, another promise to get clean. Or the rehab stint I funded. You swore you were done with this. That was different. Different how you've been making the same promises since you were 25, Silas. Each time I believed you. Each time you let me down. Silas's face flushed red. You want to talk about letting people down? You've spent my entire life making me feel like I'm never good enough, never smart enough, never worthy of the Mercer name. I gave you every opportunity. You gave me money. You never gave me respect, never believed in me. Just threw cash at problems and expected gratitude. Guests were openly staring now. Conversations had stopped. Phone cameras appeared. "Lower your voice," I hissed. "You're making a scene." "A scene," Silas laughed bitterly, the sound carrying across the terrace. "You want to see a scene, old man? I'm tired of being your disappointment. Tired of your lectures about responsibility while you sit in your ivory tower judging everyone. Silas, please. No, you know what? I'm done. Done pretending to be the son you wanted. Done begging for scraps of approval." His right hand drew back, face twisted with rage. "Here's what I think of your precious Mercer name." The slap echoed across the terrace like a gunshot. Silence fell like a curtain. 200 conversations stopped. The jazz quartet played 3 more beats before trailing off. My cheek burned, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation spreading through my chest. Then chaos erupted. Phones appeared everywhere. Camera flashes exploded. Voices rose in shocked whispers. "Oh my God, did you see that? Someone's recording this. Atticus Mercer's son just..." Silas stood swaying his hands, still raised, eyes wide with what he'd done. But instead of remorse, I saw satisfaction in his face. As phones lifted and cameras flashed, I walked away from everything I thought I knew about my son. The silence of my Coral Gables mansion felt different that night. I sat in my study at 2:30 a.m., still wearing the dress shirt from the party bow tie discarded on the Persian rug. The grandfather clock ticked steadily, but sleep seemed impossible. My cheeks still stung, not from physical pain, but from the memory of 200 shocked faces. I poured 3 fingers of Macallan, the whiskey burning as it went down. 35 years of reputation, of respect, earned 1 handshake at a time. Silas had destroyed it, all in 30 seconds. The laptop on my desk beckoned. I knew I shouldn't look, but my fingers moved anyway. Twitter-loaded Ashtarchter's yacht slap was trending number 3 in Miami. The video had been posted from 6 different angles. Silas's twisted face, My shocked expression. The slap. Each clip had thousands of views climbing by the minute. The comments were brutal. Rich kid throws tantrum when daddy says no. Spoiled brat needs jail time, not allowance. This is what happens when money can't buy character. I closed the laptop with force. Outside Biscayne Bay stretched dark under the October sky. Catherine used to love our balcony watching boats navigate the channel markers. She'd had such plans for Silas when he was small piano lessons sailing camp, the best schools Miami offered. He's going to be Special Atticus, she'd whispered one night watching 3-year-old Silas sleep. But even then I'd noticed something in her voice. Not quite sadness, but a distance I couldn't name. She'd hold him close almost desperately, as if afraid he might disappear. Those moments returned with startling clarity. Catherine's melancholy on Silas's birthdays. How she'd changed the subject when neighbors commented on family resemblances. Her insistence on handling all his medical appointments alone, claiming I was too busy with work. I'd attributed it to maternal overprotection. Catherine had miscarried twice before Silas's birth. Of course she'd be anxious. But tonight, something felt different about those memories. Silas had been a beautiful child, all golden curls and bright smiles. But as he grew, the smiles became calculated. The charm turned manipulative. By high school, he was gambling, line-treating our home like a hotel with unlimited room service. Where did I go wrong? I'd asked Catherine once after his third drunk driving incident. You didn't go wrong, she'd replied, tears filling her eyes. Some things are just complicated. I'd never pressed for details. Catherine had been my anchor, my moral compass. If she said it was complicated, I trusted her. Now sitting alone in this empty house, I wondered what complications she'd been carrying. The whiskey glass felt heavy. 35 years of raising Silas, of believing in him despite every disappointment, every broken promise, every public embarrassment. And this was my reward, viral humiliation, and the knowledge that my only child felt nothing but contempt for me. Dawn was breaking over Miami, painting the sky in shades Catherine would have loved. I should try to sleep, try to forget this nightmare birthday. Tomorrow would bring damage control meetings with publicists, strategies for rebuilding what Silas had torn down. The phone rang at exactly 7 a.m. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Mercer. This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez. I saw the news, and I think it's time you knew the truth. The elderly woman's voice trembled through the phone, carrying weight I couldn't yet understand. I moved from the kitchen counter to the breakfast table, morning coffee growing cold in my hands. I'm sorry, who did you say you were? I asked, settling into a chair by the bay window. Dr. Elena Rodriguez. I was the attending obstetrician at Miami General Hospital 35 years ago. I delivered your son, Silas. Her voice wavered with age and something deeper. After seeing that video last night, I can't take this secret to my grave. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. What secret? The night Silas was born, something happened. Something I've regretted every day since. She paused, breathing labored. Your wife, Catherine, was devastated when she saw the baby. He had been born with a severely deformed foot, what we call clubfoot. The doctors said he would need multiple surgeries. Years of physical therapy might never walk normally. My coffee mug slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers shattering against the marble floor. The words didn't make sense. Silas had never had any disability. Dr. Rodriguez, I think you're confused. Silas was born perfectly healthy. No, Mr. Mercer, he wasn't. Her voice broke. Catherine was hysterical. She kept saying you would be disappointed that you'd always wanted a perfect son to carry on the Mercer name. She was terrified you would reject the child. My mouth went dry. I remembered Catherine's exhaustion after Silas's birth, how she'd refused visitors for weeks. That's impossible. I would never... She didn't give you the chance to prove that. There was another baby born that same night. A perfectly healthy boy born to a young woman named Maria Santos. Single mother, barely 18, but she wanted to keep her child. The kitchen seemed to tilt around me. What are you saying? Your wife begged me to switch the babies. She offered me $50,000 more money than I'd ever seen. She was desperate, crying, saying she couldn't bear to disappoint you. Elena's voice cracked. So I switched them while both mothers were sleeping. I told Maria her baby had been born with clubfoot, that sometimes these things happen. She believed me. She never knew. You switched the babies. My voice came out as a whisper. God help me, yes. I was young, drowning in student loans, seduced by Catherine's desperation and the money. Maria took home your disabled son, thinking he was hers. You took home her healthy boy, never knowing. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against tile. You're telling me Silas isn't my son? Biologically, no. Your actual son, his name is Miguel Santos. He's 35 years old, living in Orlando. Maria raised him as her own all these years. Despite his disability, he became a special education teacher. He walks with a limp, but he's made a beautiful life. The phone felt impossibly heavy. 35 years of raising Silas, believing in our connection, despite every disappointment, all built on a lie. Catherine knew this entire time. She made me promise never to tell. She said she'd saved you from disappointment. Elena's voice was barely audible. But watching that video, seeing how that young man treated you, I realized we were all wrong. I thought of Catherine's melancholy on Silas's birthdays, her insistence on handling his medical care alone, the way she'd hold him too tightly, as if compensating for unspoken guilt. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying, Mr. Mercer. Pancreatic cancer. Maybe 2 months left, and I can't meet my maker carrying this burden. And because your real son deserves to know he has a father who might actually love him. Elena gave me an address in Orlando before the line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by broken coffee mug pieces, holding information that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. An address in Orlando. I needed time to think. Hours passed like a slow-motion nightmare. I wandered through my empty mansion, unable to settle anywhere. The morning's revelation echoed in every room. Catherine's desperate choice. Elena's confession, a man named Miguel Santos, living 3 hours north, who had no idea his life was built on a lie. Just like mine, I found myself in Catherine's old sitting room, surrounded by her watercolor paintings and antique furniture. What kind of man was I that she'd feared my reaction to a disabled child? Had I been so focused on perfection that my own wife couldn't trust me with the truth? I remembered the night Silas was born. Catherine had been exhausted, but there had been something else, a frantic quality to her relief when I'd praised the perfect baby. "He's beautiful, Atticus," she'd whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Are you happy?" "Of course I'm happy," I'd replied. "He's our son." But he wasn't. Somewhere in Orlando, a young mother named Maria Santos had gone home with my actual child, believing the clubfoot was cruel fate rather than midnight deception. By 3 o'clock, I couldn't stand the silence. I grabbed my keys, stepping around the dried coffee stains where Elena's call had shattered more than just a mug. I scrawled a note for my housekeeper. Gone to Orlando. Back tomorrow. J.H. The drive north on I-4 gave me too much time to think. Soft jazz played while Florida's landscape rolled past palm trees, giving way to cattle ranches, strip malls punctuated by orange groves. The air conditioning hummed, but it couldn't cool the fever of questions burning through my mind. What would I say to Miguel Santos? How do you approach a stranger and explain that his entire identity might be wrong? That the father he'd never known was driving toward him with 35 years of misdirected love. Catherine had been protecting me, Elena claimed. But from what? From loving an imperfect child, from medical bills and therapy, I'd built a business. Empire survived economic downturns, navigated Miami's cutthroat market. Did she think a child's disability would break me? Or had she been protecting herself? Maybe Catherine couldn't bear raising a disabled child, and switching babies maintained the fiction that she could handle anything. After this morning's revelations, I wasn't sure I knew my wife at all. Silas's words echoed. "You've spent my entire life making me feel like I'm never good enough." Maybe Catherine had seen something in me, some impossible standard, that made her fear disappointment. Maybe I'd been so focused on building the Mercer legacy that perfection became the only acceptable outcome. The GPS directed me toward Orlando's downtown area. Sunshine Special Education Center sat in a modest neighborhood, a single-story building with cheerful yellow paint, and a playground designed for children with mobility needs. I parked across the street, hands gripping the steering wheel. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching the activity inside the Sunshine Special Education Center through its large windows. The building hummed with life despite the late Sunday hour and after-school program for children who needed extra support on weekends. And there he was. Miguel Santos moved through the main classroom with a distinctive gait, his left foot turning inward with each step. Even from this distance, I could see him kneeling beside a young girl in a wheelchair, patiently guiding her hands as she worked with colorful blocks. My hands gripped the steering wheel. This man, if Elena was telling the truth, was the child Catherine had been too afraid to let me love. Finally, I forced myself out of the car and walked toward the entrance. The receptionist smiled warmly. I'm interested in learning more about your programs, I said. I've heard wonderful things about the work you do here. Let me find someone to show you around. She gestured toward Miguel. Miguel Santos, our head teacher, would be perfect. He's been with us for 8 years. Miguel looked up as we approached, and I found myself staring into eyes that seemed familiar. He was smaller than Silas, more compact with dark hair and olive skin. But there was something in his expression, quiet intelligence, natural confidence that reminded me of someone. Miguel, this is Mr. Mercer. He's interested in learning about our programs. Miguel's handshake was firm, his smile genuine. Welcome to Sunshine, Mr. Mercer. We're always happy to show people what we do. As we toured the facility, Miguel's passion became evident. He explained their teaching methods, introduced me to staff, and stopped frequently to interact with children. Each interaction revealed more of his character patience with a frustrated teenager, gentle humor with a boy struggling in physical therapy, quiet authority when redirecting a disruptive child. This is our sensory room, Miguel said, opening a door to reveal soft lighting, textured walls, and calming music. Some of our kids get overwhelmed easily. This gives them a safe place to reset. I watched him demonstrate equipment, noting how naturally he moved. Despite his disability, how children gravitated toward him. This was what real strength looked like, not Silas's aggressive demands, but quiet competence and genuine care. How long have you been working with special needs children? I asked. My whole adult life. I was born with this. He gestured toward his foot. So I understand what these kids face. The stares, the assumptions, the challenges. But different doesn't mean less than. The statement hit me hard. Here was a man who turned his disability into purpose, who found meaning in helping others navigate similar challenges. Meanwhile, Silas, healthy, privileged, given every advantage, had become bitter and entitled. We ended in the main classroom, where Miguel helped a young boy with cerebral palsy practice walking between parallel bars. The child's legs shook with effort, but Miguel stayed beside him, offering encouragement. Come on, David, you've got this, just like we practiced. When the boy reached the end, his triumphant grin matched Miguel's obvious pride. This man had something Silas never possessed, the ability to find joy in someone else's success. I knew what I had to do, but the words seemed impossible. Miguel, would you have time for coffee? There's something important I need to discuss with you privately. Something in my tone must have conveyed the gravity, because Miguel's expression shifted from polite interest to concern. Of course. There's a quiet place just down the street. The cafe was nearly empty at this hour, just a few college students with laptops and an elderly couple sharing dessert. Miguel chose a corner table away from other patrons, his movements careful despite his limp. He waited until we were seated with our drinks before speaking. Mr. Mercer, you seem troubled. What's this about? I stared into my coffee, gathering courage I wasn't sure I possessed. Miguel, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to hear me out completely. His dark eyes studied my face with quiet attention. I'm listening. This morning I received a phone call from Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She was an obstetrician at Miami General Hospital 35 years ago. I paused, watching his expression. She delivered both you and my son Silas on the same night. Miguel's brow furrowed. I don't understand. What does that have to do with... She told me that my wife Catherine was devastated when she saw our newborn son. He'd been born with a severe clubfoot, and Catherine was terrified I would reject him. So she convinced Dr. Rodriguez to switch the babies. The words hung between us like smoke. Miguel's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. Switch the babies! His voice was barely a whisper. Your mother, Maria Santos, gave birth to a healthy boy that same night. Dr. Rodriguez switched you with her healthy baby. Maria never knew. She was told her son had been born with clubfoot. Miguel set his cup down, hands trembling. That's insane. You're saying my mother isn't really my mother. Oh, no, Maria Santos is absolutely your mother. She raised you, loved you, made you the man you are today. But biologically, I took a shaky breath, I believe you might be my son. This is crazy. Miguel's voice rose, drawing glances from other patrons. He lowered it quickly. People don't just switch babies. This sounds like some soap opera plot. Why would you believe a random phone call? Because it explains things I never understood. My wife's behavior after Silas's birth, her insistence on handling his medical care alone, her sadness on his birthdays. I gestured toward his foot. And because Dr. Rodriguez described your exact condition. Miguel shook his head violently. No, No, this is ridiculous. I know who I am. Maria Santos is my mother. End of story. Miguel, please. Please what? Please believe that everything I've ever known about my life is a lie. His eyes flashed with anger and hurt. That my mother, the woman who worked 2 jobs to pay for my surgeries, who sat with me through every physical therapy session, isn't even related to me. I leaned forward, desperate to make him understand. She is your mother in every way that matters. Nothing changes that. But don't you want to know the truth? The truth? Miguel laughed bitterly. The truth is that some rich old man saw a video of his spoiled son acting out and now wants to trade him in for a better model. The accusations stung because part of it wasn't wrong. That's not... Miguel, I saw you with those children today. The way you care for them, the way you've turned your challenges into strength. If you are my son, then I've missed 35 years of watching you become an extraordinary man. Something in my voice must have reached him because his anger wavered. Even if this wild story were true, and I'm not saying it is, how could we possibly prove it? DNA test. We could know for certain within a few days. Miguel was quiet for a long moment, processing. When he spoke again, his voice was steadier but guarded. And if it's true, if you really are my biological father, what then? Then I'd like the chance to know the son I should have raised, but only if you want that too. He stared at me, conflict clear in his expression. Finally, he nodded slowly. Okay, let's do the test. But I need you to understand, Maria Santos is my mother. She always will be, no matter what some lab report says. I wouldn't want it any other way. We arranged to meet at a lab the next morning. The results would arrive in 3 days. Until then, we could only wait and hope. Wednesday morning, Miguel and I sat in Orlando Medical Laboratory's waiting room, both pretending to read magazines while stealing glances at the clock. 3 days of careful conversations and cautious hope had brought us to this moment. Mr. Mercer, Mr. Santos. The lab technician appeared with a manila envelope. Your results are ready. My hands trembled as I opened it. The numbers snapped into focus. 99.7% probability of paternity. Miguel leaned over to read, his breath catching. It's true. It's actually true. I looked at this man, my son, and felt 35 years of misdirected love finally find its proper home. We embraced in that clinical waiting room, both crying openly. I'm sorry I wasn't there, I whispered. You're here now, Miguel replied. That's what matters. The drive back to Miami felt different with Miguel beside me. We talked about everything, his childhood with Maria, his work, the strange twists that brought us together. He was nervous about meeting Silas, but determined to support me. By evening, we stood outside my Coral Gables mansion. Silas's Porsche was in the driveway. I found him in the living room, sprawled across the leather sectional with his laptop, probably gambling online. Silas, we need to talk. This is Miguel Santos. Silas barely glanced up. If this is about money, it's about the truth. I placed the DNA results on the coffee table. Silas, you're not my biological son. The words hit him like a physical blow. He sat up straight, laptop sliding to the floor. What the hell are you talking about? 35 years ago, Catherine made a desperate choice. She switched you with another baby because she was afraid I would reject a disabled child. Silas's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and growing rage. That's insane. You're making this up. The baby she gave birth to had severe clubfoot. She convinced the doctor to switch you with a healthy child, born the same night. I gestured toward Miguel. This is that child, my biological son. No. Silas stood abruptly, knocking over his wineglass. This is bullshit. Some scam because you're pissed about the other night. Silas looked at the DNA results. I don't care about your fake lab reports. His voice rose to a shout. I'm your son. I've been your son for 35 years. You can't just trade me in for some crippled teacher. Miguel flinched at the slur, but remained silent. I felt anger surge not just at Silas's cruelty, but at my failure to raise him better. This isn't about trading anyone. It's about acknowledging truth. The truth, Silas laughed hysterically. The truth is you're a bitter old man who can't stand that his son isn't perfect. So you've invented this fairy tale to justify cutting me off. He grabbed the DNA results and tore them in half. Their problem solved. I'm still your son, and you're still stuck with me. Silas was spiraling into rage and denial. It was time for my final decision as the man who had raised him. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Silas stood there, torn DNA results scattered at his feet, his face a mask of defiance and desperation. Miguel remained quietly beside me, a witness to this moment that would define what kind of man I truly was. I thought of Catherine, of the desperate choice she'd made 35 years ago. She'd acted out of love, however misguided. She'd wanted to protect me from disappointment, to give me the perfect son she thought I needed. In her mind, she'd been saving our family. Now I had the chance to honor that love, not by perpetuating her lie, but by showing the mercy she would have wanted me to extend. Silas, I said quietly, moving to my desk and pulling out my checkbook. Sit down. I'm not sitting down. I'm not listening to any more of this crazy. Sit down. The authority in my voice surprised even me. Silas, perhaps recognizing something final in my tone, slowly sank back onto the couch. I wrote carefully, the pen scratching across the paper in the heavy silence. When I finished, I tore the check from the book and held it out to him. $2 million. Your gambling debt's paid in full. Silas's eyes widened as he stared at the check. What's the catch? No catch. This is my final act as the man who raised you for 35 years. I sat across from him, my voice steady and calm. Silas, you're not my blood, but I did raise you. I fed you, clothed you, sent you to the best schools, and yes, I failed you in ways I'm only beginning to understand. Dad, let me finish. I held up a hand. Catherine made her choice out of fear and love. I'm making mine out of the same emotions. This money is my final gift. To you, call it mercy, call it closure, call it whatever you want. But after tonight, you're on your own. Silas looked between the check and my face, confusion replacing his earlier rage. You're really doing this. You're really choosing him over me. I'm not choosing anyone over anyone. I'm acknowledging the truth and trying to move forward with grace. I gestured toward Miguel. This man has spent 35 years becoming someone I can be proud of, despite every disadvantage life handed him. You've spent the same 35 years becoming someone I barely recognized, despite every advantage I gave you. But I'm still your son, Silas said, and for the first time his voice cracked with genuine pain rather than anger. You were my son, and I loved you as best I knew how. But love isn't enough when it's built on lies and enables destruction. I stood feeling older than my 70 years, but somehow lighter too. Take the money, Silas. Get help if you want it. Build a life worth living, but do it somewhere else. Silas stared at the check for a long moment, then slowly folded it and put it in his pocket. This is really it. After everything, you're just done with me. I'm done enabling you. There's a difference. He stood swaying slightly, and for a moment I saw the little boy he'd once been, confused, hurt, looking for someone to blame for his pain. But then his face hardened again, the familiar mask of entitlement sliding back into place. Fine, you want to play house with your new perfect son? Go ahead, but don't come crying to me when you realize he's just using you for your money too. Miguel spoke for the first time since we'd entered the room. I don't want his money, Silas. I never have. Silas sneered. We'll see about that. He walked toward the door, then paused. You know what? You deserve each other. The bitter old man and the crippled saint. Have a nice life. The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows. Through the study window, I watched Silas throw his suitcase into his Porsche and peel out of the driveway, taillights disappearing into the Miami night. As Silas's car vanished into the darkness, I felt lighter than I had in decades. For the first time, I was free to be the father I was meant to be. 6 months later, I stood in the morning sunshine outside the Mercer Special Education Center, watching children stream through the front doors with their parents. The building that had once been just an architect's dream was now alive with laughter, learning, and hope. Ready for the ribbon-cutting dad, Miguel appeared beside me, adjusting his tie. The word dad still sent warmth through my chest every time he said it. It had taken 3 months before it felt natural to both of us, but now I couldn't imagine being called anything else by this remarkable man. More than ready, I replied, straightening my own tie. Your mother would be so proud. Miguel smiled. Both of them would be. He was right. Maria Santos, who had passed away just 2 months after our reunion, had lived long enough to see her son find his biological father and watch us build something beautiful together. And Catherine, despite her desperate choice all those years ago, would have loved seeing the Mercer name associated with compassion rather than just commerce. The crowd gathered on the front lawn represented everything the center would become: special needs children and their families, teachers, therapists, and community leaders who had embraced our vision of inclusive education. Miguel moved through them like sunlight, greeting everyone by name, remembering details about their lives that mattered. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor announced Please welcome Atticus Mercer and Principal Miguel Santos for our ribbon-cutting ceremony. As we approached the oversized scissors and ceremonial ribbon, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. A slap at a yacht club, a dying doctor's confession, a switched baby's truth revealed after 35 years. Every painful step had led to this moment of pure joy. "Mr. Mercer," a reporter called out, "what does this center mean to you?" I looked at the building, then at Miguel, then at the faces of the families who would benefit from what we'd built together. This represents what real legacy looks like. Not buildings that scrape the sky or bank accounts that impress strangers, but love in action. This is what happens when you stop trying to create the perfect family and start nurturing the family you're given. Miguel took the microphone next. "My father and I learned that family isn't just about sharing DNA. It's about sharing dreams, supporting each other's growth, and using our gifts to lift up others. Every child who walks through these doors will know they're valued exactly as they are." We cut the ribbon together, and the crowd erupted in applause. Children with various disabilities ran past us into their new school, their excitement infectious. This was what Catherine had been trying to protect, not me from disappointment, but all of us from missing out on the beauty of imperfection. Later, as the celebration wound down, Miguel and I sat on a bench in the school's garden watching the last families head home. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. I thought about Silas, who had sent a brief email 3 months ago announcing he was in rehab in California. No apology, no acknowledgement of our new reality, just a terse update. I'd sent money for his treatment without being asked, because that's what fathers do, even when the relationship is complicated. "No regrets," I said finally. "Every choice led us here. The pain, the lies, the truth, all of it was necessary." Miguel nodded, then pulled something from his pocket. A small silver bracelet, identical to the one I'd worn for 35 years. "I thought they should be together again," he said, fastening it next to mine. As the two bracelets caught the afternoon sun, I realized I'd finally learned the difference between the family you're born into and the family you choose to build. Sometimes they're the same thing. Sometimes they're not. But when love guides the choice, both can lead you home. Looking back on this journey, I realized that God has a way of turning our deepest pain into our greatest blessings. What started as the most humiliating night of my 70 years became the moment that led me to my real son. Sometimes Grandpa's stories like mine aren't just about family drama. They're about divine intervention working through human mistakes. Catherine's desperate choice taught me that love can make us do unthinkable things, even when our intentions come from fear rather than faith. For 35 years, I lived a true story, built on deception, never knowing that my biological son was just 3 hours away, turning his disability into a superpower while helping other children do the same. The most painful grandpa stories often carry the most beautiful lessons. Silas's public humiliation of me wasn't my downfall. It was God opening a door I never knew existed. Through that door, I found Miguel, a man whose character shone brighter than any fortune I'd ever built, and whose heart reflected the unconditional love I'd been searching for my entire life. This true story taught me that family isn't defined by genetics alone, but by the love we choose to give and receive. Sometimes the children we're meant to raise aren't the ones we think we have. God had been preparing Miguel for me, and me for him for 35 years. These grandpa stories remind us that it's never too late for redemption, never too late to find your real family, and never too late to discover that what breaks us can also make us whole. If this true story touched your heart, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with unexpected family revelations in the comments below. Share this with someone who needs to hear that God works through life's most devastating moments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that prove love always finds a way.